what's the plan?
And we're trying to get everything consolidated and get a cohesive set of questions to ask you.
Roger, 15, we copy.
That sounds real good. Appreciate it.
Anything else to report?
Right, we haven't talked about landing for several days.
Believe none of what you hear, question everything you see. That's affirmative. That's affirmative.
Welcome to RICHPLANET TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Now, as you might know, I am involved in a legal battle regarding my work on the 2017 Manchester Arena incident. During my investigation into the incident, I investigated the narratives of over 200 people who were directly involved. In July 2024, I was the defendant at a civil High Court trial in which I was accused of harassment by two of the people whom I had investigated, whom I had never met, whom I had never tried to meet, nor had had any successful communication with. The trial lasted 4 days and finished on the 25th of July 24, and a judgment was eventually produced 3 months later on the 22nd of October 24. Now, in the 64-page judgment, it was stated that the claimants had succeeded in their harassment claim. I fully refute the judgment that my actions as a journalist reporting on an important investigation amounted to harassment, which is why I have decided to appeal. As a result of this judgment, I am now under an injunction, which means that if I make public certain honestly held, evidence-based opinions, I could face a prison sentence without access to a jury. There is also an order to pay £279,000 in damages and costs. Now, of course, I am appealing against the decision, and an appeal was submitted to the appeal court in December 24, in which we have put forward 8 grounds of appeal against the judgment. I am now waiting to hear back from the appeal court. I said some time ago that I would make public details about how the money that has been collected to fund my defence costs has been spent. You can find those details from this link. By the 25th of November 24, £130,236 had been raised, which managed to pay for all of my own legal costs, which were £129,540.56. So thank you to everyone who donated. I am facing more fees associated with making the appeal, so any further donations would be very gratefully received and put to good use. The verdict in this case does not mean the money has been wasted. On the contrary, your funding enabled me to present a professional, well-argued defence at several hearings and at a 4-day-long trial, and by doing so has helped to raise further public awareness about the facts and the evidence of the 2017 Manchester Arena incident. I have received many hundreds of supporting letters and emails, and I was well supported at the trial. Some people have been asking me to make more Rich Planet content. Over the last 2 years, I have been embroiled in this legal battle, therefore have not had the time or the energy to research and put out new content. Throughout this period, I have been performing the role of a solicitor. I chose not to appoint one in order to keep the costs down. This has been very time-consuming. There have been several court hearings throughout the last 2 years, which have involved a lot of preparation, research, putting together evidence, writing statements, preparation and submission of court bundles, communicating with the claimant's solicitors, and completing all the necessary paperwork. In 2 of the hearings, I represented myself, which involved careful preparation. In other hearings where I was represented, I have spent time preparing all the material for my barristers. Having now submitted my appeal to the appeal court, I have some breathing space and have spent some time on other things. I've been doing some technical research and development into an energy project, and I hope to report on that later in the year. A lot has happened in the world in the last 2 years that I have not reported on, so in today's show, in part 2, I will try and provide some thoughts on some of it. The Manchester evidence is evidence which mainstream media will not look at or show. The High Court refused to consider it, and it seems that even certain outlets in the alternative media will not show it either. There have been recent comments made about myself in the alternative media concerning who I may be working for. The suggestion that I am somehow a creation of the BBC has to go down as one of the most ridiculous accusations I have ever heard. My viewers will know that for many years I have advocated in lectures that they should throw their television set out of the window and stop paying for their TV licence. During 17 years of research, I have exposed scores of BBC propaganda narratives, too many to mention. To say that I have been a thorn in the side of the BBC would be an understatement. The BBC got my market stall shut down, impacting on my livelihood. Then they got my YouTube channel shut down, which also had an impact. Then they led the way for the mainstream media to subject me to the worst smear campaigns and lies anyone could imagine. According to them, I was Britain's sickest man. The BBC endorsed the legal action against me, which has resulted in an injunction and an order to pay £279,000 and the potential removal of my home from myself and my boy, who is now 9 years old. I'm not looking for an apology. Everyone is free to pontificate any untrue theory they desire. I do ask, instead of focusing on the messenger, they spend the same amount of time focusing on the only thing that matters, which is the video, audio and photographic evidence and what that evidence proves about the 2017 Manchester Arena alleged terror attack, which certain alternative media outlets have so disgracefully failed to report to their audiences. UK Column, for example, have spent plenty of time in numerous shows covering the media attacks against me and covering my court case. But I didn't want them to spend time covering those things. I want them to spend time showing and explaining the evidence. They haven't reported on the conclusions of a number of researchers about what the evidence shows. I have sent UK Column the evidence. It's like ordering a meal in a restaurant and eating the potatoes and the vegetables, then leaving the steak. And then not even acknowledging that there is a steak. Was there anything wrong with your steak, sir? What steak? Oh yes, the steak. I'm afraid I didn't see it. I think I'll leave the steak for others to tackle. I don't have the time. Now, there are other characters as well in the alternative media who have said things. And let me just explain this with my analogy of a truthometer. So this is the truthometer, where here is the official narrative, which quite often is a lie. In the middle position is the truth. And then we can go further into, let's say, far-fetched theories, conspiracy theories where there's no evidence for. Now, this position, the truth, will often be criticised for being a conspiracy by the mainstream who push a fake narrative. All right. So when people like me hunt for the truth and report the truth, there's two things that can happen in order to attack that position. Firstly, they can argue for the original position, which is the fake narrative that they've put forward. Okay. And the other thing they can do is they can try and push the narrative further to a more conspiratorial, less credible position. And this is both of these things have happened recently with certain alternative media outlets. Some have been saying things like, well, Richard D. Hall's story has fooled lots of people. So they are trying to pull them back to the mainstream narrative. And you've got other people who are saying things like, Richard D. Hall is a creation of the BBC or is an agent or whatever. Okay, so they're trying to pull people away from the truth, and I believe it's all orchestrated. Okay, now there were comments made by two presenters of UK Column who independently, they both said the same thing, and they said that nobody's a saint. Richard D. Hall is not a saint. Well, Richard D. Hall is not a ballet dancer. There's no need to say that, though, is there? When somebody states something which is not, rather than something that is, then look carefully at the motivation for saying it. Richard D. Hall is not a saint. Statement analysts would get quite excited at that statement. The need to say it tells me that someone or some entity is very concerned that I may, at this present time, due to the situation I have endured, be seen by some as some kind of saint. Why should that concern the UK column? Why is there a need to say it? Well, personally, I don't think it does concern them, but I do think it concerns the state. Figure the rest out for yourself. Now, to finish part one, I just want to mention a case in Ireland that journalist Gemma O'Doherty has been reporting on. On the 12th of August 2020, 29-year-old Aaron Brady was found guilty of the capital murder of Detective Garda police officer Adrian Donohoe, and he was sentenced to a mandatory 40 years in prison. Now, Gemma is a very diligent journalist and believes Brady is innocent. It is claimed that photographs that show the perpetrators of the murder could not have been Brady, but these were not shown at the trial. It's also claimed that key witness testimonies were coerced and other witnesses bribed. If you want to read about this, follow this link to Gemma's Substack.